On the eve of the wedding, my husband lost a bet with his secretary and changed our invitation cards. The place that was supposed to hold our wedding photo has all turned into his and the secretary's couple photos. I called to question, but heard a woman's aggrieved sobbing on the line. "Yvain, I've gone too far this time. Please don't take it out on Adam." Then came Adam's gentle reassurance. "It's just a photo. She's not that petty." After I finished listening, I didn't argue with him as I usually did. I just notified relatives and friends one by one that the invitations had been sent out incorrectly. Then, I replaced the new invitations with a photo of me and my childhood sweetheart. "Have you thought it through? Are you really planning to marry me? As long as you are still willing to marry. Okay, I'll go with you to see Grandma tomorrow when you return to the country." As I swallowed a calming pill and had just hung up the phone, a voice came from behind me.
"Yvain,
"Who are you chatting with?" The steam wrapped around us. It was Adam, just out of the shower, casually wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. He was only wrapped in a bath towel, lowering his head and, in a familiar gesture, asking me for a kiss. If it were usual, I would definitely have happily responded to his affection. But this time I instinctively shrank away. "A friend." I turned off my phone and replied perfunctorily. He reluctantly let go of his hand and clicked his tongue. "Is it just about the wedding photos? You just need to explain it clearly to them. Taylor is too busy. It wasn't done on purpose. Besides, as long as the right people are there for the wedding, isn't that enough?" In a nonchalant tone, he completely shifted the responsibility onto Taylor, as if mixing up the photos was just a trivial matter. The heart I had finally managed to calm once again flashed with sorrow. Yes, after all, the text and photos in the invitation were all completed by me alone during the night. By the time it was handed to Adam, there was only the step of sending it to relatives and friends left. But I didn't expect that he would actually treat our invitation as a bet to win Taylor's favor. I still remember the day Taylor sent me the recording, that tone of pride and triumph. "Yvain, do you think if I make Adam run away from the wedding, he would agree to me? But I can't do such a thing. Otherwise, Yvain would be so pitiful." It was as if she was already determined to have Adam. Seeing that I had been silent for a long time, Adam probably took my silence as forgiveness. "Don't worry, Yvain." He pinched my cheek gently, his expression softening with a hint of reassurance. "I only have you as my wife. When the time comes for the wedding, no matter what you want, I will personally arrange it all." I know that Adam is not someone who gives in to requests easily. For example, he usually doesn't like taking photos. In 3 years of dating, there has never been a single picture of us together on my phone. Even that set of wedding photos was something I had to pester him for a long time to get. But I remember that on the day of the photo shoot, Adam was urging me with a cold face the whole time, which made me, who was happily standing by, feel a bit out of place. The only thing said to the photographer was in an impatient tone, "You've taken so many already. How is it still not enough?" If it weren't for the photo Taylor posted, I probably wouldn't have known that Adam could also show such a beautiful smile in front of the camera. It turns out that whether he likes taking photos or not depends on who is standing next to him. I was awakened in the middle of the night by the sound of rain outside the window. I opened my eyes and saw that Adam beside me was still awake. The faint light from the phone screen reflected on his face, and the person he was chatting with used a cute rabbit avatar. It was Taylor who had sent him the new invitation for the all-nighter work session. Adam watched intently, a natural smile playing at the corners of his mouth, completely unaware of my gaze from behind. "Don't stay up late over such trivial matters in the future. Get some rest." "Boss, considering how hard I've been working, can I request the soup dumplings from the Fuji breakfast shop for breakfast tomorrow? Little glutton, do you still want the mushroom filling?" After Adam finished asking, he finally allowed himself to turn off his phone. However, whether it was an unconscious action or not, that hand in the darkness reached over from one side, wanting to embrace me. A feeling of nausea surged up suddenly. I turned over, thinking it was just a dream, fearing the cold, quietly avoiding it. The next day, after breakfast, Adam rarely suggested driving me to the office. "It's raining. The roads will be difficult later. I'll take you." His expression was gentle. If I hadn't seen his conversation with Taylor yesterday, I would probably take this as Adam's rare thoughtfulness. My company is very close to the Fuji breakfast shop. But my plan for this morning is to go to the airport to pick someone up. I didn't plan to tell Adam about Connor returning to the country, even though he probably wouldn't care. I also didn't want to add trouble for myself. Little did I know that as soon as I sat in the passenger seat, a lipstick that wasn't properly capped smudged my white pants. I picked it up and took a look, only to find that this wasn't something I had bought. A hint of unnatural panic flickered in Adam's eyes. He snatched the lipstick away and casually stuffed it into the front storage compartment. It's probably something Taylor accidentally left here. When we go out, she sometimes touches up her makeup in the car. I absent-mindedly hummed in response, just lowering my head and vigorously rubbing at the stain on my pants. Adam seemed a bit surprised. Aren't you angry? What good is it to be angry? The decorations in this car, the fragrance, even the peace talisman I personally prayed for him while climbing step by step to the mountain temple have already unknowingly turned into things that Taylor likes. I have had arguments with Adam about this. But no matter how many times he throws these things away, there will always be new ones to take their place. I'm tired and don't want to argue anymore. I suggested that I wanted to get out and change clothes, but Adam hurriedly locked the door and drove away. He hurried to find Taylor, not wanting to spend another moment with me. There are many people in line at the Fuji breakfast shop. For some reason, Taylor is also there. Even before my gaze noticed her, Adam had quickly unbuckled his seatbelt and got out of the car. Taylor, what are you doing here? The chill of late autumn was quite heavy. Taylor stood in the cold wind wearing a dress, her nose turning red from the cold. Adam, I feel it's not quite right to have you buy breakfast for me, so I came myself. Adam casually took the bun from her hand and draped his coat over his shoulder. The fluid motion was like that of a couple who had done it countless times before. However, it seemed that only when he pulled Taylor to the side of the car did he remember that today he was driving a two-seater Ferrari. And there was still me in the car. I didn't move, coldly staring at Adam's hand resting on the car door. He looked up at the overcast sky and then glanced at Taylor, who was shivering beside him. With a hint of apology, she said to me, "Yvain, your company is just a short walk ahead. You should go on foot. Taylor has a cold and can't get caught in the rain." Taylor weakly shrugged her shoulders, smiling innocently and gently. "Yvain, I'm really sorry. It's all my fault for not being well." But once I got in the car, I saw her lips curve slightly, silently mouthing the words to me. Self-inflicted humiliation. The sports car sped away, leaving me in a roar that seemed to mock me. And Adam didn't even think to leave me an umbrella. I looked at my disheveled reflection in the puddle and felt that everything was absurd and laughable. Taylor is right. It turns out I overestimated my position in Adam's heart. I gave a bitter smile, turned around, and took a taxi to the airport in the sudden downpour. I thought Connor wouldn't wait for me anymore. After all, I was a full hour late because of the traffic jam. As soon as I entered the terminal exit, someone grabbed my collar first. "Yvain." The familiar tone made me look up and collide with a pair of eyes filled with laughter. The last time I saw Connor was 3 years ago. Our two families were originally close friends, but when our parents unilaterally arranged our marriage, he and I tacitly decided to go abroad together to avoid the matter. I went north to Paris, while Connor went south to Australia. Later, perhaps out of fear of embarrassment, and also because I was in a relationship with Adam, we rarely joked and chatted freely like we did in childhood, except for greetings during holidays. Who would have thought that the farewell was actually for discussing marriage? I looked at my soaked shirt and dirty pant legs, feeling so embarrassed that I didn't know what to do, even forgetting to respond to him. Seeing this, Connor draped the trench coat over my shoulders. 3 years have passed, Yvain. How come you haven't made any progress at all? Connor tapped my head, teasing me relentlessly. When I was discovered with my eyes red as if about to cry, the first person to come forward and hug me was him. There are only 5 days left until the wedding, but there are still many things to be done. Connor didn't ask much. He followed me to change the venue plan, ordered suitable suits and wedding rings, and we went together to take new photos. It was only when I stood in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau that I hesitated to take that step forward. Until he cast a puzzled look at me. Connor, I know you married me to put Grandma at ease. When the time comes and things are resolved, if you find someone you like, we can divorce at any time. Connor is willing to help with this, which has already put me in a position of an unclear favor. Not long ago, my beloved grandmother was diagnosed with late-stage liver cancer, and the doctor said she could last at most 3 more months. The old man's greatest wish before passing was to see me have a good home. For this reason, Adam and I hastily finalized our wedding plans. It's just laughable that we've procrastinated to the point where we haven't even applied for a marriage certificate yet. Connor's gaze swept over me, and his expression didn't seem very happy. Yvain, you're dreaming. I stiffened all over, instinctively thinking he was going to back out. Instead, I heard Connor's teasing tone. Let's talk about divorce after you find me a second marriage partner. I have always hated Connor's sharp tongue, but at this moment it surprisingly eased the atmosphere just right, making my guilt feel a little lighter. After returning home with the stamped marriage certificate, Adam's call finally came in. Yvain, it's this late. Why haven't you come home yet? The Taylors have no water. Come over here to borrow our bathroom for a shower. By the way, where do you usually keep your pajamas? The casual tone was accompanied by the sound of rummaging through boxes. Let me know that Adam's concern for me is nothing more than a verbal pretense. Adam, that place will no longer be my home. His voice instantly turned cold, as if scolding me for my nonsense. What do you mean? Are you really planning to break up with me over a photo? I'm serious. As soon as I finished speaking, a gasp from Taylor came through. Someone probably fell in the bathroom. All right, stop throwing a tantrum. We'll discuss the wedding when you come back. The phone was hurriedly hung up by Adam, cutting off the last thread of my feelings for him. Without thinking, one can tell that he is going to rescue his secretary. Taylor has used such attention-grabbing tactics more than once. From the weddings and funerals of the elders at home, to the coffee staining the documents, Adam is the only one who always takes these troubles in stride. The words that needed to be said have already been spoken to him, and I swiftly added this number to the blacklist. Looking up again, I met Connor's probing gaze. I warned you before, people like Adam are unreliable. When we first started dating, Connor did advise me to think it through. But he was once the only person who gave me warmth in a foreign land. I first met Adam in Paris. At that time, I was rushing out of the house to escape a marriage and ended up having my suitcase stolen by a thief. With a language barrier, I almost found myself homeless on the streets. In a moment of desperation, it was the suddenly appearing Adam who helped me call the police and kindly took me in for a night. In such a strange environment, one is always prone to feel a sense of closeness to fellow beings. Moreover, during the time spent in Paris, without family or friends by my side, the days passed in a bumpy manner. One snowy winter night, I got lost in District 11 and my phone had died because it ran out of battery. Adam searched for me for several hours, from street to alley. When he finally stood in front of me, a thin layer of frost had formed even on his eyelashes. Yet, despite that, he simply said, "No matter where we go next time, take me with you." That last night, Adam held my hand and never let go. Everything that followed seemed to happen naturally. We fell in love and spent 3 years in a passionate romance. Adam pursues romance and is not stingy in offering me all that is romantic. He once ordered couple rings engraved with our names for me and took me to see the aurora at the Tropic of Cancer. During the busiest times, I would prepare a steaming bowl of chicken soup for him, always leaving a light on for him when he returned home late at night. This continued until Adam was transferred back to the country for work reasons. Our long-distance relationship lasted only a few months, and the originally peaceful life was disrupted by Taylor. At first, she only showed her face in a video of Adam and me, and she even spilled the black coffee that was on the table. At that time, seeing Adam's cold expression, I still smiled and urged him to be a little more tolerant towards the young girl. Little did I know that later, she would infiltrate our lives in every possible way. The so-called tolerance has turned into indulgence time and again. Perhaps even before the invitation was changed, I was already very disappointed in Adam. The wedding preparations were going very smoothly. Connor was involved in every detail, even personally selecting the photo for the new invitation. On the red background, a man in a white shirt gazes at me with a warm smile, appearing even closer than a real couple. After hearing the news of the wedding being changed, many relatives and friends expressed their surprise. But more were still offering their blessings. You said the two of you were so awkward when your family suggested marriage. How come now you've even gotten the marriage certificate? On the day of the wedding, while toasting, I squatted in front of my grandmother in my wedding dress, lowering my head in embarrassment at her joking words. Connor saw my unease. He took my skirt and gently pulled me into his arms, explaining, "Grandma, it was my lack of courage before that made me mischievous. Now that I've finally won her over, of course I need to quickly get the marriage certificate to secure her." His tone was consistently relaxed, yet he spoke with such seriousness that it was impossible to tell he was acting. Grandma laughed until her eyes were wet, handing my hand to Connor's. All right. Connor has grown up under my watch too. Yvain, you marry him. Grandma is very at ease. Grandma, we toast to you. Just as the wine glass was raised, a sudden noisy argument erupted from the other side of the lawn. It seemed that someone was causing a disturbance. A security guard ran over, awkwardly informing me, "Miss Yvain, a gentleman insists that he is the groom getting married today and wants to see you." I looked up and found Adam, who I hadn't been in contact with for several days, suddenly appeared in my line of sight. He had probably never experienced being blocked at the door by two security guards. There was a clear anger in his eyes. "I am the groom. If you don't let me in, who is Yvain going to marry?" As soon as the words fell, Adam and I locked eyes. Clearly, he also saw the wedding dress I was wearing and Connor, who was also holding a glass beside me. The expression that was originally filled with anger instantly turned to astonishment. I find it somewhat ridiculous. He wasn't surprised when the wedding dress didn't arrive at home. He wasn't surprised when the wedding planner didn't call him, and now he suddenly remembers that he was supposed to be the groom. "Yvain, what are you doing?" Connor stepped in front of me and said calmly, "Adam, today is my wedding with Yvain. If you are here to celebrate, I welcome you. But if you are here to cause trouble, I will have to show you the door." After a while, Adam seemed to understand the crux of the matter and laughed in anger. "It's one thing for you to make a fool of yourself alone, but to drag so many people into your nonsense? You actually thought of such a ridiculous idea as a fake marriage?" Hearing his words, a considerable uproar arose among the guests. I forced myself to stay calm. "If I remember correctly, I should have already mentioned breaking up with you. My marriage with Connor is just a normal one. Adam, I won't joke about my life decisions like you do." His expression darkened, as if he wanted to say something but hesitated. Just a second later, Adam suddenly rushed past the security and punched Connor in the face. "What exactly did you say to Yvain? How could you deceive him like this? The person he likes is clearly me, so how could he choose to marry you?" His voice trembled violently, his eyes bloodshot, as if something beloved had truly been taken from him. The first punch caught Connor off guard. By the time he reacted, he quickly returned a few punches to Adam, grabbing him by the collar and questioning him. "When Yvain needed you, you weren't there. What right do you have to say these words now? If you really liked Yvain, you shouldn't ruin her wedding at a time like this." Grandma has fainted. Grandma was already in the late stage of cancer, so it was not easy for her to walk out of the hospital room to attend the wedding. I originally thought that the happy event would lift her spirits a bit, but who knew Adam would come out and stir things up? I looked at the old man lying on the ground, feeling both anxious and angry, and I slapped him across the face. "Adam, if anything happens to Grandma, I will never let you off the hook." Connor called for an ambulance, and after it arrived, I accompanied Connor and Grandma to the hospital. Fortunately, the doctor said Grandma doesn't have any major issues. Hearing this, the tension I had been holding on to finally eased, and I collapsed onto the bed. The various busyness of the past few days has exhausted me to the point of fatigue. "Yvain, how did you just run over here like that?" Following Connor's words and looking down, I realized that I had actually run all the way here, barefoot. The situation was urgent just now, and I found it inconvenient to wear high heels, so I took them off halfway. The mirror reflected my crooked hairdo and a red gown, turning me into a disheveled bride. Connor somehow found me a pair of disposable slippers and directly held my dried feet in his arms, saying, "This will keep you a bit warmer." Strangely, I thought of how he had protected me in front of Adam just now. My heart suddenly skipped a beat in panic. I tugged at my skirt uneasily and instinctively teased, "Connor, when did you become so considerate?" As soon as the words fell, Connor reached out and tickled the sole of my foot. He smirked maliciously and said, What did you say?" I gently kicked him and laughed, scolding, "You childish fool, Yvain." Hearing a voice suddenly beside me, I realized that my grandmother had woken up at some point. She turned her face to the side, looking at me and Connor with a kind smile. "You two will definitely be happy in the future." I exchanged a glance with Connor, my face flushed, and quickly pulled my foot out of his embrace. "Grandma, don't joke with me." Grandma was still cheerful. Looking at her grandson-in-law Connor, she had an expression of overwhelming joy. Originally, I had planned to stay in the hospital to take care of her for a night. But since my grandmother insisted that I shouldn't delay my wedding night, and my uncles and relatives came over afterwards, I had no choice but to take Connor home with me. Surrounded by guests at the wedding banquet, I almost forgot that I would soon be alone with him. Not as childhood friends, but as husband and wife. At this moment, I actually started to feel at a loss. Connor, on the other hand, appeared to be as usual. When he got home, he didn't say anything, just asked me to change out of the uncomfortable dress and get some rest early. I originally planned to tidy myself up and go to bed. As a result, while Connor was taking a shower, someone called him. It's a colleague at work, asking him to buy a ticket to go back next week for a handover, and then he'll be transferred back to work in the country. I thought since I had some free time, I might as well help him sort out the ticket booking. Little did he know that as soon as he opened the ticket booking app, he saw a string of booking records from Connor. He had actually been to Paris several times in the past few years. But why has Connor never mentioned this to me, nor has he ever come to find me? I pondered for half a day, and suddenly a bold thought emerged in my mind. As if guided by some unseen force, I opened the chat history with Connor. Find the time of the day he bought the ticket for the first time. It was just when I got lost in Paris, and before my phone ran out of battery, I sent out the last message asking him for help. "Idiot, if you got lost, look at the map. Do you want me to go fetch you back?" He always spoke like this, and I didn't take it to heart. Who would have thought that Connor, who said this at the time, actually bought a plane ticket and flew to Paris after a journey of 30 hours. On such a cold winter day, perhaps he braved the wind and snow, searching for me in District 11 for a long time. Worried about my safety, afraid that I would suffer from the cold like today. But that night, because of Adam's confession, I had no time to pay attention to anyone else. It wasn't until the next day, when I saw the news, that I remembered to belatedly let Connor know I was safe. And then there was Christmas Day. I merely mentioned to him that celebrating alone was boring, and the neighbor aunt, who was just an acquaintance, invited me to their home to celebrate. Even in the gift exchange game, I got a limited edition dessert that I had always wanted to eat. That store is far from my place and always has a long line, so I haven't been able to buy anything a few times. At that time, I felt a bit perplexed. Now that I think about it, if Connor had come to Paris that day, it might have been something he had someone else deliver. My eyes slowly filled with a sourness. My heart felt as if it had been thrown into a stone, creating intense ripples. Why didn't Connor tell me about these things? When Connor came out of the bathroom, I was still trembling with his phone in my hand. The screen was still on the text message of the flight ticket page. Connor's movement of drying his hair clearly stiffened. I silently looked at the person in front of me, and suddenly I didn't know where to start with the words I had in my heart. In the end, I just asked Connor, "Why do you want to go to Paris?" Connor hesitated for a moment, then let out a light sigh. Yvain, what I said to Grandma was not a lie. I didn't react in time and was a bit taken aback. "What?" Connor stepped closer, pinning me against the wall, his breath brushing over the top of my head. "I have really liked you for many years, and it is true that I regret missing you. So, Yvain, even if you marry me for Grandma, I marry you, and it is indeed a wish fulfilled. Apart from his support for me at the wedding, I rarely saw Connor show such a serious expression. I was cornered with nowhere to hide, and my heart was in turmoil from his words. Half of it was disbelief. That's Connor, who has been fighting with me since we were kids. We fought over lollipops, competed for the top of the class, and even avoided each other for 3 years over the matter of a marriage alliance. Clearly, we argue every time we meet. How could he possibly like me? But at this moment, the intense beating of my heart seems to be telling me otherwise. After spending this time together, I do have feelings for Connor. Until finally, after pondering for a long time, I could only glare at him and say, "Connor, you liar." He smiled, but there was a hint of unmasked loneliness in his smile. Regretting it now? That's fine. Once Grandma's situation is resolved, we'll get a divorce. I didn't say anything, just grabbed the hem of his clothes. I closed my eyes. Connor paused for a second, then kissed my lips. The enchanting atmosphere was suddenly interrupted by the ringing of the phone. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number, and when I answered, I realized it was Adam, whom I had blocked. "Yvain, I'm sorry. I was too impulsive about this morning. How is Grandma doing now?" Adam's voice was a bit hoarse, and he coughed a few times. I said coldly, "Grandma is doing well. If you don't appear in front of her in the future, I believe she will be even better." Adam fell silent for a moment, then gave a bitter smile and said, "If it were before, hearing me cough, you would definitely be the first to worry about my health." I was at a loss for words, but a wave of nausea rose within me. He still remembered that I once cared about his body, but he forgot that my concern came from love. However, after giving his love to someone else, he began to crave my care. Adam was still talking. "Can we talk some more? I'm right downstairs at your new place." I didn't expect that Adam would actually find the wedding house. He probably got the address from some mutual friends. Looking down from the windowsill on the second floor, I could indeed see Adam's car parked not far away. He leaned against the car door, his fingertips pinching a cigarette. Through the night, our eyes met. I adjusted my shawl and said calmly, "What else is there to talk about? I'm already married and have no intention of becoming friends with my ex. I was wrong about the invitation, but you don't have to marry someone you don't love and suffer for it. Ruining a lifetime is not worth it." Adam put on a serious expression, as if he were standing in a superior position to offer guidance. I only find it absurd. On what basis does he take it upon himself to think that I am unhappy, and on what basis does he believe that he is the only one worthy of bringing me happiness? I'm just not willing to compromise myself. That's why I brought up breaking up with you. How much can someone who treats an invitation like a bet really care about this marriage? Besides, how do you know that the person I marry isn't someone I like? My question seemed to catch Adam off guard. After all, the fact that the invitation was treated as a bet was something Taylor had told me in private, and Adam was unaware of it. When he spoke again, there was a hint of defensive guilt in his voice. "Vane, that day I was just playing games with Taylor because I had too much to drink. Besides, you and that Connor have only been together for a few days. What kind of feelings could there be?" "Hey, Connor, what are you doing?" The conversation was cut off as Connor suddenly picked me up and threw me over his shoulder, and I had to urgently cling to his shoulder. The unsteady phone fell to the ground. The shadows of the lamp on the bed swayed unsteadily. Connor stared at me, his gaze filled with danger. "On our wedding night, how much longer do you want to talk to other men? Is Adam being unreasonable? Connor, are you jealous?" I looked at his increasingly sullen expression and almost couldn't help but chuckle. How about we cultivate our feelings a bit? I fell silent, allowing Connor to kiss my cheek. But what I didn't know was that night, the lights of the villa were on for how long? Adam's car was parked outside the villa for how long? It didn't leave all night. On the first day back at work after my wedding leave, I unexpectedly ran into Taylor. She squatted at the front desk, holding a loaf of bread, looking pitiful. Upon seeing me, she immediately rushed over and grabbed my arm. "Yvain, I ask for nothing else. I just want to stay by Adam's side. Please spare me." At the entrance of the office building, people come and go, and soon countless gazes fall upon me. I frowned and shook off her grip on my arm. Taylor, what are you talking about? Yvain, Adam truly likes you. I know I'm just a pastime for him, and I don't dare to compete for your position. However, I still have parents at home who are waiting for me to support them. Could you please let me see Adam one more time? After listening to her rambling words, I finally managed to piece together the course of events. It seemed that on the second day of my marriage, Adam returned in a bad mood and found a reason to fire her. Having lost his job, Adam no longer acknowledged her as his girlfriend, who had an unworthy name and was not upright. With no other options, Taylor ended up blaming everything on me. She is so insecure. Every word and line reflects her lowering herself, eager to cling to Adam, this high branch. This appearance only makes me feel both pity and resentment. I shook the wedding ring in my hand at Taylor and said, "What do you mean by entertainment? It's not the Qing dynasty anymore. Taylor, look clearly, I am already married. I can't interfere in your matters with Adam, but if you casually slander someone, I won't hesitate to make public how you were a mistress before." In front of the crowd, I mercilessly struck at her sore spot. Taylor's face instantly turned pale, her brows furrowed, looking as if she was on the verge of tears. She stayed squatting at the door until I got off work. I thought for a moment and then dialed Adam's number. In less than half an hour, a man in a suit appeared before me. He looked like he had rushed over from some meeting, disheveled and weary, his shirt in disarray. He had a bruise on his face from Connor, which made him look somewhat comical. "Yvain, are you regretting it?" Adam looked at me, his gaze filled with expectation, which turned to disgust when it touched Taylor. "How did you get here?" I smiled calmly and said, "Seeing her like this, I can only be more grateful that I didn't marry you." It turns out that the person who once received his favor could be discarded with just a single sentence. His deep affection could never last. Once it exceeded its validity period, it could be easily retracted. No wonder our 3 years of relationship meant nothing to Adam. "You can solve your own problems. Don't disturb my work anymore, or I will have to call the police." Just as I was about to leave, Adam suddenly grabbed my arm, his eyes reddening. "You married Connor because of Taylor, didn't you? Now that I've fired Taylor and won't see him again, will you come back?" It seemed that he could no longer hold back his emotions. His hand tightened around me little by little, his voice almost pleading, "On the day you got married, I saw you standing with Connor, and I really regretted it." I couldn't help but scoff after hearing that. Adam knows everything. He knows that his attitude towards Taylor would make me sad and disappointed, yet he has never shown any sign of it. Only after losing it did I receive a deep affection that is now worthless. What use is that? Adam, I originally thought that even if we were to break up one day, it should end on good terms. But now, you really make me feel sick. I ignored Adam's reaction and walked into the elevator, shaking him off. Since then, I have not seen Adam again. I only heard from friends around me that shortly after being unilaterally broken up with by Adam, Taylor became pregnant. She was unwilling to abort the child and went to Adam, crying and making a fuss, hoping to seek a legitimate identity. In the heat of the argument, Adam accidentally pushed her. Taylor fell and injured herself after the miscarriage, likely making it impossible for her to conceive again. Perhaps out of a sense of guilt, Adam reluctantly agreed to the marriage and brought her home. However, a forced melon is never sweet. After a few months, Adam took up with a new woman outside, indulging in a life of drunken revelry. Perhaps this also made Taylor realize a bit that Adam's true nature cannot be changed. She finally woke up, wholeheartedly focused on fighting for the inheritance. However, these no longer have anything to do with me. The year after marrying Connor, my life was simple and happy. Last month, after I found out I was pregnant, Connor became even more anxious, almost moving the entire office home to work. Seeing him spend all his free time researching recipes for pregnant women, I couldn't help but laugh. It's not time yet, so why be so anxious? You don't understand, nutrition is very important during pregnancy. Although he says otherwise, I know that everything Connor does is because he loves me. I watched him busy in the kitchen, touched my belly, and quietly spoke to the child in my heart. Baby, you will definitely be very, very happy in the future. The story ends.